Yes, today we will discuss about the selection of breeding methods in livestock and poultry. The different type of selection and also the breeding methods need to be discussed, especially in case of the livestock and also the poultry. So the things go as such. The different methods of the selection of the poultry and also the livestock, different livestock. So it is why it is important, is importance of breeding in livestock and poultry is uh, we need to produce lot of milk, meat and egg and at the same time enhance the breeding quality, then enhancing disease resistance, adaptation to the environment and economic social impact on agriculture farming. Then, importance of breeding in livestock and poultry, it is having a lot of economic significance and also it is also going to increase the GDP of the nation in terms of the production of the milk, meat and egg. And also the economic sustainability and the viability is also important thing to feed to the product. Breeding reduces the resource of the consumption and making livestock production more sustainable also. Then adoption, breeding helps animals to adapt to the different type of the environment, then also different type of the uh, places and also different type of the parasitic infections crucial for improving the breed and flock performance. So what are all the basic concepts of the breeding are? Number one, the animal breeding means the science of genetically improving the animals for traits are desirable for production of the health or adaptability. Then qualitative traits are traits controlled by the animal, a small number of the genes, usually influenced by genetic variation. The examples include coat color, horns, and the disease resistance. So yesterday we have discussed all these things, especially the phenotypic characters, whereas the quantitative traits are always measurable, like the egg production, milk production, meat production, and the vigor of the animal. Whereas the heritability means transmission of such characters from the parent to the offsprings. So the objectives of breeding programs is always it is for the improvement of genetics. Then one should focus on increasing productivity traits like faster growth rates, higher milk and egg production, or better feed conversion efficiency. Then also emphasis on reproductive traits like improving fertility and reducing calving intervals, which are essential for farm profitability also. Whereas enhancing the animal welfare also one of the things, especially in case of the selection of the breeding, and we need to produce the breeds which are resistant to the mastitis in case of dairy cattle, even in case of poultry, reducing the need for medical intervention and also the death of the animal, and selecting animals with better temperament or the docile cattle and which can reduce the stress and also improve the genetic trait or handling such animals. Then we need to select a particular breeding method, both in case of the poultry and also in case of the livestock. To adopt this thing, we need to have the important breeding program in case of livestock and poultry for the better economic impact, sustainability, and also we need to know the basic concept of the breeding. What are all the breeding and what need to be considered in case of breeding? So once again, as usual, qualitative and quantitative trait which need to be inherited to the next offspring. Then the objectives of the breeding always we need to have the enhance the animal welfare, disease free, sustainability, then also to maintain the genetic diversity also without much intervention into the genetic quality of the animal. Then nutritional versus artificial selection, natural versus artificial selection is the we need to see what is the definition of natural selection means. Always it is in the nature, whereas artificially we are going to select certain traits, qualitative or quantitative. Then the phenotypic selection is based on the observable traits which can be observed by the external appearance, whereas the genotypic selection is based on the genetic markers or genomic selection. Then the breeding methods in livestock include inbreeding, means fixing traits, inbreeding, depression, whereas the outbreeding means it is crossbreeding, means breeding between two genetically different character animal phenotypically, whereas the outcrossing, or it also known as the hybrid vigor, whereas the third one is the line breeding, means preserving valuable genetics for the future use, whereas the fourth is the pure breeding, means maintaining always the genetic purity of every breed of the animal from which it is evolved. For example, Amrit Mahal, then the Devani and other thing, where in which we need to maintain the pure breeding. Then methods of the breeding in case of the poultry, always to have a very short, brief introduction. Of course, we are going to tell it in later. That's number one is the mass selection in case of the poultry and selecting for very high performance. Then second one is the family selection, evaluating the family performance of that particular breed. Then third one is the pedigree selection, means one type of the poultry is selected based on ancestry records. For example, the Giriraja birds are selected based on both the characteristic of the local bird and also the exotic birds. So this is the combination of the breeding, integrating cross breeding and pure breeding both. That is the method of the breeding. And there are a lot of factors influencing selection of breeding in methods. Number one, the genetic parameters like heritability, genetic correlation, and also the economic importance. Then prioritizing economically valuable traits, especially the this depend upon the uh, uh, especially this is depending upon the interest of the consumers, especially in developing different type of the breeds, either meat breed or also the egg breeds, etc. So this type of the breeding method is always preferable when the people or the genetics they are in the requirement of the different type of the breeds as per whether they produce the egg or also the meat. Then emerging technology in breeding, so there are a lot of emerging technologies are there in the breeding. That's genomic selection, that's the predicting breeding value through the genome scans. So this is the modern method of the genetics and breeding. Then yesterday also we have seen that CRISPR and gene editing is there. Means we are incorporating a new type of the gene in already existing gene or replacing some type of the chromosomes on the chromosomes or the loci or the nucleotides. Then the third one is the reproductive technologies like artificial insemination, then embryo transfer or in vitro fertilization and cloning. These are all the three type of the technologies. Then there are a lot of case studies and practical examples are already existing how the breeding program need to be evolved in India. So in case of India, India has got its own livestock breeding policies. So especially it has got the policies to the dairy cattle, sheep, and also the pigs. Whereas in case of poultry breeding, layers and broilers for egg and meat production respectively. Whereas there are a lot of challenges and ethical constraints always as usual in case of the all the breeding program. The genetic manipulation ethics are there always. We cannot use the unethical practices and always have the animal welfare constraints, biodiversity impact. So the crossbreeding program should also be implemented very carefully so that the local breed of the cattle should not be destroyed by the sudden onset of the crossbreeding. Then the sustainability means balancing improvement and environment impact. The third one is the conservation. Breed conservation is of a great significance nowadays, and preserving genetic diversity in indigenous breeds is very much required. Then the methods of selections are always there in case of the livestock. Number one, single trait or multiple trait selection. And the success of raising the animal depends upon the improvement in more than one trait. There should be improvement in more than one trait. So this is also another important thing, that single trait selection can have the unexpected or unanticipated things, unexpected or unanticipated, undesirable also sometimes. It is not desirable for us. Whereas that can also be another quantitative characters due to the genetic correlation and environmental response. So the methods of selection are simultaneous selection for many traits that can be applied based on the individuals own for farmers by adopting any of the procedures of selection. So there are, this main chapter itself is on the methods of selection. So somebody may wish to adopt tandem selection or ICL methods, or one may evaluate the individuals on the value of each of the traits selected for, and then sum of these values to give a total value of all the traits. And ultimately what happens is these produced are known as methods of the selection, and the animal with highest score is then selected. So there is a chronological events, especially in case of the methods of selection, both in case of the poultry as well as in case of the livestock. Then another definition is tandem selection. So what happens is, in this method, the individual selection, the selection is practiced for one trait only at a time until a satisfactory improvement is achieved. That's number one. The efficacy of this selection depends on the genetic correlation among the traits under selection. And it has got its own limitation because this method is less effective than other methods, and it requires more time for improvement in all traits of the cattle. Then the independent culling levels or ICL, please see this thing. And this method of individual selection involves selection for two or more traits at a time, and a minimum standard for each trait is fixed, and every animal to be selected must meet the minimum standards fixed for any one of the traits. That will be rejected irrespective of the fact that how good the animal was in the other trait. So this is called as independent curling levels or ICL. Then advantages of ICL is the number one, selection for more than one trait and culling at every stage, whereas the disadvantage of this is no compensation for the other traits is conducted. And culling level, tedious job to decide CL, and more emphasis to early expressed trait than selection intensity. Then there are the methods. Selection is used in the selection of cattle for flow purpose, and the animal is selected with excellence of the type and color, conformation of the traits, ignoring its performance or the economic traits. Then the selection intensity under ICL is, it is decreased by the selection of more than one trait, and accordingly there is a formula to correlations among the traits like 1 and n is equal to no traits which are equally important and independent. Then the total score of the selection index is also calculated by different methods are there, different formula are there, and superiority in some trait can make up deficiency in others, like the ICL, which discards the animal failing to qualify in one trait regardless of the superior in other trait. So it may be one superior in one character whereas inferior in other character. So this also counts. So efficacy of SI over other methods of selection means SI is one of the most method of the selection than others, and it allows the individual which are superior in some traits be selection regardless of their integrity or inferiority of the traits. So the only advantage of index method increases is the number of trade, thus it requires less time to bring about overall improvement. So it's a fast track method. Then there is one thing called as the use of discriminate function to construct selection index. Means the selection index it involves the technique of discriminate function originally developed by Fisher and by Smith, and the index will take place by this formula I is equal to B1 x1 B2 like that it goes. So there are a lot of bases for the selection index, like the genetic worth of the individual is expressed as a formula depending upon the H is equal to A1 G1 A2 G2 and A1 N2 G1 N total number. So here G1 G2 G2 etc. are the genotypic value of the individual character, whereas A1 A2 are the relative economic importance. So H is equal to overall net genetic worth of several traits. So this is the genetic base of selection index, what you call selection index. So the phenotype of the individual based on the phenotype performance of various traits is defined as the I is equal to B1 x1, B2 x2, etc. So these coefficients are be estimated in such a way that the correlation between H and I become maximum. So once again, information required for construction of the selection index are listed as the economic value, then genetic value, then genotypic value. All these things are there. And estimation of the economic value, always it is in the totally measured by the money which is involved in this particular thing and development of a breed, etc. So the most important economic traits are age at first calving, AFC, immediately the animal should calve. Milk yield, lactation length, it should have long lactation length, highest milk yield, highest peak milk yield, and milk yield per day should be very high of calving interval, etc. So, in order to bring about the similarity among different traits, the economic value of the standard units of each tribe is considered. Then correct construction of the selection index is also another challenge wherein the estimation of genetic and economic parameters are considered. And the things which are included here are the economic value of for all the traits based on price and data and profit. And the genetic and phenotypic variance of all the traits are included here. Okay, then estimation is also done by the regression coefficient. Here is the formula, and we need to put that formula and calculate it accordingly. And once again, the regression coefficients are estimated by setting and solving the normal stimulus simultaneous equations for n number of traits under this reaction as possible. So this is the formula, and one can put the different values here and calculate the regression coefficients. And the selection index is another definition here. So it is the ratio of selection index means I B1 x1 B2 x2 plus Bn xn, whereas Bi and Bxi values are put up in the index to obtain the index value for every animal which is involved in this thing, and the animals with top highest index values are selected. Then practical problems in constructing selection index. There are a lot of practical problems. The information required is not available for all the breeds, and it is not accurate also many times. Then the relative economic importance of the traits varies from type to type and in different locality. So it requires information of price and cost and production of the trades, but sometimes the economic values changes due to the change in market demand also. So many parameters need to be considered, like phenotypic parameters and the genotypic parameters also. Then one need to also consider the comparative efficacy of different methods of selection, and the tandem method in the selection may be unimportant character in the beginning of first few generations, and selection for more important character may be for a brief period. Then in the ICL methods already we have discussed, the culling levels may be set to too high for one trait which is not performing well, and one very which is performing well need to be maintained. So the selection progress is also affected by animal health, which also affects the different parameters. And many people have concluded that index method is most superior and tandem selection is the least, whereas the efficacy of ICL method is intermediate. So they have decided all these factors by considering so many parameters. Then two trait selection index is there, means two traits, phenotypic traits may be there or the genetic traits may be there. So which are used when the generic worth of an individual can be expressed like the A1, G1, etc. G1, G2 genotypic values. A1, A2, their relative economic importance. Then the phenotypic of the individual based on the phenotypic performance is as the things what we are telling here. Then what's a breeding? Already we know it's a application of genetic and principles to the improvement of heredity for economically important traits in domestic animal and improving the milk production in dairy animals, egg production in case of chicken. Always the advantage of the breeding is to produce more high and new traits. Then methods hand mating, pair mating, harem mating. So hand mating means in this male and female are brought together for a brief period, then separate. Once the mating is over, so this is called as the hand mating. Rabbits and hamsters are mated by this method. Then the pair mating means this is the method in which male and females are mated together rest of their breeding life entirely. So this method in case of mice, one male mated with one female and left together for the rest of their breeding life. So this is pair mating. Whereas in case of the rats, the pregnant females should be isolated prior to the delivery from the males. Then harem mating means this method males and females are run together but separated prior to the parturition. And this method, four females are regularly mated with one male, 1 is to 4. So the female is separated soon after the pregnancy is confirmed and replaced by the fresh females with the same males, and this is followed for guinea pigs, especially laboratory animal. And now we will come to the methods of the selection for breeding, especially in case of the poultry. So this topic contains selection methods of selection for breeding for livestock and also the poultry. Whereas the objectives of the poultry breeding to increase annual egg production, meat production, disease resistance, capacity of the meat and milk, and conversions of the food conversion efficiency. So, selection may be defined as a process in which certain individuals in the population preferred for the production of next generation. also. Whereas the basis of the selection, individual or mass selection, pedigree selection, family selection, progeny testing, and SIP testing, all are must in this thing. Whereas the individual selection is also called as the mass selection because the individual is selected from mass on its own phenotypic value and put together in mass mating. Then generally used in broilers and not for layers because it is affected greatly by environmental factors. Then individual selection, of course, it is uses effective in high heritable traits for the traits expressed in both sexes. Example, the growth rate, body conformation, and feed efficacy. Whereas it has got its own limitations, not useful for low heritable traits and not useful for sex limited traits. And it can be practiced for those traits that are exhibited after sexual maturity. For example, it is the egg production. So the pedigree selection is also another thing. So the pedigree is the record of an individual's ancestors, including its own parents, and birds are selected based on desirable characters of parents, grandparents, and grand to grandparents, and the this collateral relatives, so it is productive performance is good for birds are selected. So it is uses easily selection for the traits which are expressed only after sexual maturity, and the least expensive method. Limitations are pedigree errors may be lead to wrong selection. Then family selection is the one where individuals are selected on performance of their own family, and the side or dam family averages are compared to population mean, and whole family is either selected or rejected. So the system involves two type of the selection: progeny testing and SIP testing. So here, the entire family is selected based on the individual selection and can be used for sex limited traits. And the disadvantage of this thing is superior animals get eliminated because of the poor family mean. Then progeny selection, the individual is selected on the basis of the performance of its progeny, that is son and daughter. The biggest problem with this system is the long time is consumed to obtain the very high performance value of the progeny. Then progeny selection, its advantage is useful for the selection of sex limited character and for the selection of low heritable traits, and it is very expensive in this case, and it increases the generation intervals. SIB testing means sisters and brothers of individuals are called as the SIB or siblings, you may see. So to avoid time consumption problem in progeny testing, individuals are selected on the basis of performance and appearance on their brothers and sisters. So based on this thing, we are going to select. Then the methods of this selection are also very similar to that of elastic here. Then tandem method, independent culling levels, and selection index. This is also existing in case of the birds. Then tandem method is selection of only one trait at a time, improvement till satisfactory level of improvement is seen in that particular trait. And selection efforts are then relaxed for this trait and concentrated on second trait also, and so on. And the improvement is simultaneous for traits which are positively correlated and vice versa, negatively correlated. The time consuming method. Then independent culling levels are always selection. Many traits can be done at the time of simultaneously getting it done. And any individual below any one or more level is culled irrespective of meritorious performance in other traits also. So this need to be noted. Then selection index, also called as total score method, is there, is always there, and each trait is given weightage depending upon its economic importance, rotability, interrelationships among the traits. And the score index of each trait is added to arrive at total scores index. So this is an efficient method when compared to the other methods. So in case of poultry, there are different type of the mating systems are there. Number one, flock mating, common method of mating used for most of the breeding practices. About 220 to 30 males run with 250 to 300 females in flock in separate pens for each male. Whereas the pen mating means more number of females are allowed to mate with single male in small flock. Whereas the stud mating, the male is housed in a pen and females are individually kept one by one with male for mating time only and later it is removed. Whereas the shift mating, males are shifted from one pen to another pen certain period for time. Then lastly, it is artificial insemination. No times, sometimes the poultry is also made as artificial insemination methods. Then breed refers to the group of individuals with a common ancestry and having simultaneously in shape, conformation, growth, temperament, shell color, and breed color two types. So variety is subdivision of the breed and used to differentiate it by plumage color and comb type from the other groups of the same breed. And strain means a variety, some special characteristic or parameters are emphasized more to get better results. That is to increase the early maturity. Then strain with a variety of some special characteristic also made. So the already this has been discussed. What are the breeding principles, etc. The parent line should be crossed to produce commercial stock, whereas the breeder stock is maintained by main hatcheries only. They practice pure line breeding, means they supply parent lines to franchises hatcheries. Then layer breeding stock, pure line like AXA and also the AXB, then may cross AXB or BXA. So three-way cross is ABX, etc. Then broiler breeds are the male lines, female lines are separate. The male lines are the Cornish or synthetic population like Cornish, Rock Hampshire, whereas the female lines are Rock, New Hampshire, then their strain crosses. Then common layers are to note down Babcock, Highline, Bovines, Declag, Hisex, Lohman, Puna Pearls, then Sonali, then Rupali. All these are the commercial layers. Whereas the commercial broilers are Highgrove, Hubbard, Ross, Cobb 100 to 400. All these are the commercial breed. So economically trade in case of the breeders, the layers especially we need to say that the fertility rate, then hatchability of an egg, viability, then part of annual egg production like the different weeks of the age 40, 54, or 72 age groups. Whereas the egg quality traits are also considered in case of the layers, then the feed efficiency means with less feed also they should produce a big egg. Then broilers body weights is the very important selection criteria, whereas the feed efficacy, fertility, hatchability, viability, and also the last is the dressing trade or the slaughter trades. So economic traits in poultry are body weight, then egg production, egg quality traits which should be very high, then the different breeds of the birds, do maintain different type of the parameters. Poultry breeding research in case of India, it's also a major emphasis given in last 4 to 5 year plan. Then AICRP was coordinated, All India Coordinated Research Project on the layers, which is established in Hyderabad, Jabalpur, then Anand, then Menuti, then CARI is there. So these centers are considered as the topmost breeding centers for the poultry. Then PDP means evolved layer over Crishilia, a PDP producing 270 eggs in 72 weeks. Then Krishbro at PDP attaining the weight of 1500 kg eggs 6 weeks of the age of a bird. So there are different types of the breed line of the birds are developed, and especially in case of the Karnataka state, Giriraja has been produced, Vanaraja is produced, then Gramapriya for rural background poultry production. They are developed especially from different agriculture universities, or later they become the veterinary universities. So the breeds by All India Coordinated Research Project on Poultry, the Anand versus Anand, first and second. Whereas the Hyderabad, it released ILR Jubilee, then Bhubaneswar, Kalinga Color. So this is also not the popular breed. Carry Ijatnagar CARI Priya is the thing, and Mumbai Deshi DPL, etc. They are well. The role of the private sector is, especially in case of poultry, it's topmost, whereas the government sector is not considering it. So VHL, BV300, pioneer breeding forms or bovans. Then the other breeds present in India are Ross, which is imported from UK. Eyebrow means Netherlands. Then Hubbard is imported from the United States of America. Then the Anak is from the Israel, Avian is USA. So that's about the breeding traits, its importance, then also the selection methods, which is very important for us. And have a nice day. Goodbye.